Alright guys, since Milestone of Radiance is already dropped in the game, so I'll be showing you guys what are my thoughts, what I should recommend you guys to pick the ML5s. Since it's random, so maybe this should be give you a bigger picture of what you should gunning for. So, since the ML5s are up to Successor Teiyu, there will be some units that are omitted, like Dian, Nurse Yoha, some of the other important units. But here we are. There's a lot of like the good top 10s, and I think you should have as you progress in the game. So the first one is Ruel. So since revive meta is going on and there's a lot of counters, Ruel is still a solid pick for tank down comps. Alright. But the thing is with Ruel, I feel like you can get her with the first Moonlight Blessing. So I would say if you haven't got her, just pick with the Moonlight Blessing. So on to the next one is Muna. I feel like this is really versatile unit, be it for cleave, standard, everything just dies with the seal since most of the meta units have a lot of passive and passive is just broken in the game. So with the seal is going on, it basically disables most of the meta units, right? And so the next one is Alenaf here. Since most DPS metas are relying on penetration damage, she is a really good or more of the for tank down players. The next one is Balion. Balion is a direct counter for free Aran or soul units since boot cleave is a thing. So Balion helps disrupt these type of teams, right? And she's also has a lot of like other capabilities of damaging with the 3F artifact and it destroys like everything. And the other one is the Briar. Briar is definitely a solid choice for cleave units if you haven't got her. She's usually abused in high tier arena. She's usually like paired with Vian. And it just if you have these two, you can just cleave most of the scales defenses. And we're going to the Celine, which is DPS. On the next one, she's a really solid DPS. She's basically like Amalcan, but you have the options to make her faster, more damage, just cleanse the entire team, applies immortality buff. Her kit is 2 stacked. And so moving on for mate, I feel like kind of good as well. She's really solid if you don't have any counters for Renak. If you don't have B-Dom, then the mate is usually like really good choice. Usually she's already paired with Ruel. There's been memes going on. Some evil players keep pairing these two together. You are forced to play 100 turns per game. So that's really unfortunate, but mate is my kryptonite, bro. So moving on to the next one, Malona. Malona has recently got a buff. She has added evasion, which makes her a better or savior Aiden. That actually helps her sustain in the longer fights. And so moving on for Zio, this is a boss from episode 3, I think, or 4. This is a really solid choice. You can get the imprints from the shop. But basically, if you don't have any openers, you can just use him. It is really easy to gear and has a lot of like utility. Now, for the next one is Herseti. Herseti is basically fills the same role as Zio, but Herseti, you are kind of forced to have an AoE. And there's a lot of counters like Aram, Yenya. You can also like ERG, but she's a really solid pick for RTA. If you don't, but basically if you don't have her, but for things like Malona, you can use it in PvE. For Celine, you can use it in Inheritance. And then, yeah, there's a lot of like a couple more. That's why she's like this behind. So moving on, we have the good tier, which is not really the best, but it is decently usable. And these are the good picks if you already own these top 10 units. So the first one is LRK. He is the direct counter for free Ren or any like AoE units like Lion, maybe like Solly, who's the S1 is kind of forced to do an AoE. Well, he directly counters that. So yeah, this is kind of niche to have. It's just strictly for PvP. And moving on to the Fallen Cecilia, she is kind of niche, but I kind of use her a lot in Guild Wars. Basically, using her is like free protection set, and you don't have to worry about the gear requirements. She's really easy. So moving on to a Ravi is kind of get a buff recently, and what she does right now is she endures, and then her S3 resets every time the ally dies. So you can just like have to up to infinity. She's really nice to have. Moving on to Huayang, I usually pair her with Rinag and Yenya just to counter Harseti. Nodos has been going around, and so Huayang is usually what I go for to beat this defense. And so moving on to the Amal Shu is I kind of use her a lot against like Ras, Yuha, and then +1 defenses. This is really nice to have as well. For Guild War, I use her a lot. And for Strays is really solid DPS unit, but be wary that his gear requirement is kinda hard to build. It's not for your like average Andy or for your like starting out, but he's also nice to have. Also, I think he's the boss of an episode, so you can get his imprints in the shop. Moving on to the Solitis, I feel like this is a really nice unit. You can use this in PvE, Ancient Inheritance, but basically I always use her with Genua, who relies on Rage buff to do a ton of damage. But she's also like versatile in a kind of a way. It's like having Celia's, but her S1 is really reliable to drag someone else's. So we already covered top 10 and good. Now we're moving on to the niche category. So we have Dilbert, Lionheart, Rowana, Bright, Cilius, DK Sharoon, DDR, Caffel, A Tywin, Solitis, Solly, and then a Eupheme, Astromancer Elena, Tomoka, Teiyu, Mudwig, Lua, SPA, and Dorvis. So if you play Cleave, I would suggest you pick any of these like Cavill, Astromancer Elena, Tomoka, and Teiyu, and Mudwig. But if you play Standard, you can choose any of these: Dilibet, Lionheart, Bright, Conk, DK Sharoon, DDR, a Tywin, a Eupheme, and Lua. So these are all pretty solid units, but they shine at their own. So it's not like everyday use that like this for these units. Conk is usually pairing for Blue Hua, and Dorvus, you can access this guy in the first Moonlight Blessing as well. So his value is kind of significantly drop, but he's really so for these sections. I think this is like a mixed comments for it because Pera is really solid. She was the MVP for last season RTA, and I cannot say the same with the others though. This is kind of outdated. Pyroflan, she's really fun though. Hosik, I don't really play her much, so I don't really know about her capabilities. And for Sage Vivian, she's kind of broken. She used to, but Solitis exists, so her focus just gets half, and she just dies from cringe. So Kairon is kind of solid. I would say he's kind of like in the niche, but honestly, for newbie players, you shouldn't be taking this. Spaz, same thing. Spectre Tene, you can access this with the first Moonlight Blessing, but I would rather just use the ticket to get the Ruel. BMH, he's kind of good, but it's kind of hard if you don't get the tempo. So that's why you get something like an insurance like Ruel is way better reviver. Captain Landy is really niche, I would say. But I don't really see her nowadays because there's so much counters for her. And then we go to the Sage Baal. This is really anti-cliff. I would rather put this in a niche as well, but For newbie players, he's really hard to use and really gear demanding. And same goes with Architect Leica, which is cleave unit. Most of the cleave units, and even for the niche ones, they require insane amount of DPS. That's what cleave is mainly all about. It's all about gear gapping, whether I gear gap you or not. Okay, so I won't talk much about these bad units, but all I want to say is RB is not as bad as you think. I would say I can use him against Rena comps, but that requires amount of DPS gear as well. I think I would go like a triple Tauren so that when he dies after Rena S3, revive himself and then back and then just run it back. Closer, this is Cleave unit, DJB. I don't really see him, and he's kind of really hard to gear when he was his own meta in the, I think it was previous 4th season or something. And then the rest seems like they're kind of outdated, except for the Amalkaweric. He's kind of nice. He has S2 with defense penetration, which people usually just use him to counter Barunka. Or you can also access this guy with the second Moonlight Blessing. And I think that's it. I already covered them all. So whatever ML5s that you get, just play because eventually you guys will be getting them all. I hope and I wish the best of luck for you guys on the upcoming Milestone of Radiance chest.